I'm Emily Sullivan, 29, and last month I achieved what I've worked toward for 4 years, a double promotion at Henderson Financial Partners. That evening, dressed in my new champagne silk dress, I sat at an empty table meant for six, staring at my phone in disbelief at the text from my mother. Something came up with Jason. "You're not our priority right now." Years of playing second fiddle to my brother crystallized in that moment, illuminating a pattern I denied my entire life. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button if family dynamics like these feel all too familiar. I promise what happened next changed everything. Growing up in Lexington, Massachusetts, our family dynamic was established early and remained unyielding throughout my childhood. My brother Jason, just 15 months my senior, embodied everything my parents valued: athletic prowess, natural charisma, and an effortless ability to command attention wherever he went. Our modest colonial house gradually transformed into a shrine to his achievements. Glass cabinets displayed his gleaming football, baseball, and basketball trophies, while framed newspaper clippings chronicled his high school sports career. My father Robert, who worked as a structural engineer, devoted every spare moment to coaching Jason's teams, his weathered hands adjusting my brother's batting stance or spiraling footballs across our backyard while I watched from my bedroom window. Mom, Diana, an elementary school administrator with a flair for entertaining, designed elaborate celebration dinners after each of Jason's victories, transforming our dining room with team colors and handcrafted centerpieces that commemorated his latest accomplishments. Meanwhile, my academic triumphs collected dust: honor roll certificates tucked away in desk drawers, science fair blue ribbons hanging on my bedroom wall where only I could see them. When I won the state mathematics competition in 10th grade, beating students from 63 schools across Massachusetts, I arrived home clutching my trophy to find an empty house. They'd forgotten the date, having attended Jason's regular season basketball game instead. The message was unspoken but crystal clear. In the Sullivan household, athletic achievement trumped academic excellence every time. I developed coping mechanisms that would shape my adult personality. Perfectionism became my shield, overachievement my sword against invisibility. I meticulously organized my assignments, staying up well past midnight to ensure every essay was flawless, every calculation double-checked. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford in my quest for the validation that remained perpetually out of reach. My high school counselor, Mrs. Abernathy, a silver-haired woman with penetrating eyes, was the first to recognize my potential beyond my brother's shadow. She guided me through college applications with maternal care that made my heart ache for what I lacked at home. When the acceptance letter from Yale arrived with a substantial scholarship offer, I trembled with anticipation, certain this achievement would finally earn my parents' recognition. That evening, I placed the prestigious envelope beside my father's plate at dinner, waiting for his reaction. He glanced at it, nodded briefly, then immediately pivoted the conversation to Jason's upcoming championship game, the gilded acceptance letter forgotten amid discussions of defensive strategies. Yale became my escape, the distance between Boston and New Haven representing more than geographical separation. In those Gothic buildings, I reinvented myself among peers who knew nothing of Jason, who saw me for my intellect rather than as someone's less interesting sister. My finance professors recognized qualities my family never had: analytical precision, strategic thinking, and uncompromising work ethic. During college breaks, when I returned home, the familiar dynamic awaited me. Questions about Jason's coaching aspirations dominated holiday meals, while my internship at a prestigious investment firm warranted only passing curiosity. My relationship with my brother himself was complicated by the unbalanced attention rather than any malice on his part. Jason, with his easy smile and casual confidence, seemed genuinely unaware of how our parents' favoritism had shaped our relationship. He'd occasionally ask about my studies, but his eyes would glaze over when I discussed financial models or market trends, his attention span for my world measured in minutes rather than hours. After graduation, I accepted a position at Henderson Financial Partners in downtown Boston, determined to build a life where excellence wasn't just acknowledged but celebrated. The competitive environment suited my conditioned need to prove myself, and I thrived amid the pressure. 12-hour days became my norm, weekends at the office my routine. Colleagues noticed my dedication, but few understood the emotional engine driving my relentless work ethic. One person who did understand was Stephanie Chun, a fellow analyst who joined the firm the same week I did. Unlike the childhood friendships that had faded under the weight of my academic obsessions, Stephanie recognized something familiar in my drive. Over late-night takeout sessions analyzing portfolio projections, she shared stories of growing up with immigrant parents whose expectations had both propelled and confined her. They wanted perfection, but only the kind they recognized. She confided one evening as we reviewed quarterly reports, her understanding creating the first crack in my carefully constructed walls. Through Stephanie, I began building a circle of friends who valued me without conditions or comparisons. 2 years into my career, I met Michael at a charity gala hosted by Henderson. He approached me during the silent auction, intrigued by my aggressive bidding strategy on a painting that reminded me of New Haven in autumn. Unlike previous romantic interests who'd eventually grown frustrated with my work commitments, Michael, an architectural designer, respected my ambition and encouraged boundaries I'd never considered before. "Your family's perception isn't your reality," he told me 6 months into our relationship, after witnessing a particularly painful phone call with my mother, who dismissed news of my client portfolio expansion to excitedly share that Jason had been interviewed by the local news about his community basketball program. Michael's perspective shook loose something I'd buried deeply, the possibility that the problem wasn't my inadequacy, but their inability to see my worth. This revelation, uncomfortable as it was, began reshaping how I approached family interactions, though old habits of seeking validation remained stubbornly entrenched in my emotional landscape. In the weeks before my promotion, I'd made tentative progress in addressing these patterns, even declining Sunday dinner once to complete an important project without the usual accompanying guilt. Yet beneath this growth, a childlike hope persisted, that with a significant enough achievement, my parents might finally see me through unclouded eyes. My journey at Henderson Financial Partners spanned 4 years of meticulous client management, innovative investment strategies, and countless nights illuminated by the blue glow of spreadsheets rather than moonlight. The financial district's glass towers had become more familiar than my own apartment building, my cubicle more personalized than my living room. Henderson operated on a strict hierarchy where advancement typically followed a predetermined timeline. Junior analysts became senior analysts after 3 years, then associates after another 2, with further promotions spaced at increasingly wider intervals. This traditional ladder made my double promotion to senior financial analyst, leapfrogging the associate position entirely, unprecedented in the firm's recent history. The morning of the announcement, Marcus Winters, the division director whose silver-streaked hair and impeccable suits embodied old-guard finance, called me into his corner office with its panoramic views of Boston Harbor. "Sullivan," he began, his usual formality momentarily softened by something resembling pride, "your performance has been exceptional. The Reynolds account alone would justify recognition, but combined with your work on the Eastlake merger and the quantitative analysis improvements you've implemented, the executive committee voted unanimously." He slid an embossed leather portfolio across his mahogany desk. Inside, the formal offer letter detailed a compensation package that momentarily stole my breath, a 60% salary increase, expanded benefits, and stock options that could significantly appreciate over time. In financial services, this represented more than money. It was institutional acknowledgement of exceptional value. The office celebration that followed carried none of the restraint typical of Henderson's corporate culture. Colleagues from across departments stopped by my desk throughout the day, offering genuine congratulations without the undercurrent of competition that often characterized such advancements. Stephanie abandoned professional decorum entirely, pulling me into a fierce hug that sent my carefully arranged sticky notes fluttering to the carpet. "They finally recognized what I've known since orientation week," she whispered, her dark eyes bright with shared victory. Even Richard from compliance, notorious for his stoicism, offered awkward but sincere praise for my regulatory framework innovations. For perhaps the first time in my professional life, I allowed myself to fully absorb the recognition without immediately seeking the next challenge or achievement. Walking through the marble-floored lobby that evening, catching my reflection in the polished elevator doors, shoulders back, smile unforced, I experienced a moment of profound clarity. I was valued here. My capabilities were seen, my contributions recognized without qualification or comparison. This realization sparked a dangerous hope regarding my family. Perhaps this achievement, significant enough to break company precedent, substantial enough to materially change my future, would finally be the one they couldn't minimize or overlook. That night in my Beacon Hill apartment, I crafted a carefully worded text to my parents explaining the promotion in terms I hoped would translate its significance across the chasm of our different value systems. I included the percentage increase in my salary, knowing my father's engineer's mind responded to quantifiable metrics, and mentioned the rarity of such advancements, appealing to my mother's appreciation for distinction. Their response came the following morning, a brief "congratulations, that sounds nice" from my mother, followed by an immediate pivot to whether I'd be attending Jason's community basketball fundraiser the following weekend. The familiar disappointment rose, but was quickly tempered by determination. A text couldn't convey the magnitude of this professional milestone. An in-person celebration would make the difference. I reserved a private dining room at Aquitaine, a South End bistro whose warm lighting and intimate atmosphere had impressed my mother during a rare shopping excursion we'd shared the previous year. The reservation was made 3 weeks in advance to accommodate everyone's schedules, my parents, Jason, Michael, and even Stephanie, whose presence I hoped would help translate my professional accomplishment for my family. The restaurant's events coordinator, Isabel, helped customize a prix-fixe menu featuring my father's preferred aged steak and my mother's favorite creme brulee. I even arranged for a boutique bakery to create a custom cake decorated with subtle financial motifs, nothing garish, just elegant enough to mark the occasion, with suitable gravity. With the logistical details arranged, I turned to personal preparation with equal precision. An afternoon at Newberry Street's exclusive boutiques yielded the perfect outfit, a champagne silk dress whose understated elegance reflected how I wanted to present this new professional chapter. The price tag made me wince momentarily before I reminded myself that the promotion justified the expense. I confirmed the dinner date with everyone individually, emphasizing its importance while trying to avoid the pleading tone that typically characterized my familial interactions. My mother sounded distracted during our call, the background noise suggesting she was simultaneously organizing something for Jason's youth program, but she confirmed their attendance with what I interpreted as genuine intention. Michael sensed my nervous anticipation, surprising me with delivery of my favorite organizational journals the night before the dinner. For recording all the brilliant ideas you'll bring to your new role, his note read, his understanding of my love language of productivity tools touching me deeply. As the celebration approached, I allowed myself expanding moments of optimism. This achievement felt different from previous milestones, more substantial, more externally validated by an institution my parents respected. Each time doubt crept in, I recalled Marcus's words about my exceptional performance and straightened my spine. Perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps this accomplishment would finally be enough. The morning of my celebration dawned with unusually perfect weather for Boston in late April, sunshine warming the cobblestone streets without the accompanying humidity that typically blanketed the city later in spring. I interpreted this meteorological cooperation as a favorable omen, allowing superstition to temporarily override my analytical nature. My preparations began with an early appointment at Salon Capelli, where Antonia, an Italian-American stylist whose artistic touch I'd trusted for 3 years, created an elegant updo that balanced sophistication with approachability. "For your special day, something memorable but not severe," she explained, her experienced fingers working through sections of my chestnut hair with practiced precision. The makeup artist, Paolo, approached my features with similar philosophy, enhancing rather than transforming, his technique accentuating my hazel eyes while maintaining a natural appearance appropriate for both professional recognition and family dinner. Returning to my apartment with 4 hours until the reservation, I laid out my ensemble with methodical care, The champagne silk dress, delicate gold jewelry inherited from my maternal grandmother, perhaps the only family heirloom that had come to me rather than Jason, and Italian leather pumps purchased during a rare vacation the previous summer. Each element had been selected to project confidence without ostentation, success without showboating. Michael arrived at 6, his tall frame filling my doorway, dark blue suit impeccably tailored to his broad shoulders. The bouquet of white lilies and blue hydrangeas in his hands represented more than routine romantic gesture. He'd remembered my offhand comment months earlier about these flowers symbolizing prosperity and gratitude in the Victorian language of flora. "For the financial wizard who's going to run the whole firm someday," he said, pressing a kiss to my temple, careful not to disturb my styled hair. His genuine pride, unmarred by insecurity or competition, still felt foreign after years of conditional family approval. The drive to South End passed in animated conversation, Michael sharing amusing details from his latest architectural project while I confessed my hopes for the evening with uncharacteristic vulnerability. They might not fully understand the significance in industry terms, I explained as we navigated through Back Bay traffic, but the promotion's tangible aspects, the office, the compensation, the title, those should translate across the professional divide. Michael squeezed my hand at a stoplight, his expression supportive but tinged with the protective concern he always displayed regarding my family. "Just remember, their reaction doesn't define the achievement," he reminded gently. We arrived 30 minutes before the reservation, time I'd deliberately built into the schedule to ensure everything was perfect before my family arrived. Isabel greeted us with professional warmth, escorting us to the private dining room where soft lighting from Art Deco sconces illuminated cream-colored walls and polished wood surfaces. The table, set for 6 with fine china and crystal glassware, featured a tasteful centerpiece of blue and white flowers mirroring my bouquet. A bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket, awaiting the toast I'd carefully planned. As 7 o'clock approached, I sent a group text confirming the room was ready, including the restaurant's valet parking information to smooth my father's notorious aversion to downtown parking. Michael engaged the server in conversation about wine pairings, his easy charm creating a welcoming atmosphere while I checked my phone with increasing frequency. 7:15 came and went without arrival or communication from my family. By 7:30, the appetizers I'd selected, a seasonal asparagus tart and New England seafood sampler, waited untouched on the table while the server refilled our water glasses with diplomatic regularity. Michael maintained conversation, discussing everything from recent market trends to summer travel possibilities, his determination to distract me from the growing knot of anxiety in my chest increasingly transparent. At 7:45, I excused myself to make separate calls to my parents and Jason, each going directly to voicemail. The knot tightened, familiar disappointment threatening to constrict my airways. Returning to the table, I found Michael charming the restaurant manager, who offered to hold our main course order until our guests arrived. "Traffic might be bad coming from Lexington," Michael suggested, though we both knew rush hour had ended hours earlier. At 8 o'clock, the first text arrived from my mother. "Running late. Start without us." No explanation, no estimated arrival time, no apology. The brevity struck me as uncharacteristic of a woman who typically embellished her communications with excessive emoticons and flowery language. I showed Michael the message, watching his expressions cycle through confusion to controlled anger on my behalf. "We could order the mains now," I suggested, clinging to protocol as emotional turbulence threatened my carefully constructed composure. The prawns with saffron risotto arrived beautifully plated, but tasted like nothing in my mouth as anxiety dulled my senses. Michael attempted to salvage the moment, raising his glass in a private toast. "To your extraordinary accomplishment and the remarkable woman behind it," he offered, his sincerity creating a momentary bubble of genuine celebration amid the increasing discomfort of the 4 empty chairs surrounding us. The restaurant manager approached our table with professional concern, inquiring with diplomatic phrasing whether we wished to adjust our reservation. His practiced neutrality couldn't completely mask the sympathy in his eyes, a look I'd grown to recognize and dread throughout my life, the pitying acknowledgement of someone being stood up, left behind, forgotten. The weight of this public disappointment, witnessed by staff whose job included observing such social dynamics, intensified my humiliation. I found myself offering explanations nobody had requested, assurances that my family would certainly arrive soon, excuses about possible traffic incidents or last-minute emergencies. With each passing minute, these justifications sounded increasingly hollow, even to my own ears. At 8:25, I stepped into the restaurant's elegant powder room to regroup, staring at my reflection in the gilt-edged mirror. The woman looking back at me, professionally styled hair, carefully applied makeup, expensive dress, seemed like a character in a play whose co-stars had abandoned the performance. I splashed cool water on my wrists, a calming technique my college roommate had taught me during finals week, and returned to the table with renewed determination to salvage something from the evening. Michael's protective instincts had fully activated, his usual diplomatic demeanor hardening into something more resolute. After 15 more minutes, "I think we should enjoy this beautiful meal properly, just the two of us," he suggested, his tone leaving little room for argument. "Your achievement deserves celebration, regardless of who's present to witness it." At precisely 8:32, my phone vibrated against the tablecloth, the screen illuminating with my mother's name. Relief flooded through me as I reached for it, prepared to forgive whatever excuse they'd offered just to salvage the evening's purpose. The message that appeared, however, sent an electric shock of disbelief through my body. Something came up with Jason. "You're not our priority right now. Maybe we can do lunch next weekend instead." The 7 words in the middle of that text, "You're not our priority right now," seemed to hover in the air before me, escaping the confines of the digital screen to reverberate through the private dining room. The casual cruelty, the unvarnished honesty of the statement struck me with physical force, momentarily stealing my breath and sending a cold wave of nausea from my throat to my stomach. Michael, witnessing my reaction, gently took the phone from my trembling hands, his expression transitioning from curiosity to shock to a controlled fury I'd never seen on his usually gentle features. "What the actual hell?" he muttered, finger hovering over the call button. "No, let me," I insisted, reclaiming the phone with a surge of adrenaline that temporarily displaced the hurt. My call to my mother went directly to voicemail, her cheerful recorded greeting about leaving a message for the Sullivan family suddenly sounding like mockery. My father's phone similarly offered no connection, just the terse voicemail greeting of a man who viewed telecommunications as a necessary evil rather than a connection tool. The directed rejection, the intentional unavailability after such a blunt dismissal, crystallized something inside me, a hardening of soft tissue into something more resilient and less forgiving. "I'm calling Jason," I decided, thumbing through my contacts with unsteady fingers. Unlike our parents, my brother answered on the 3rd ring, ambient noise immediately suggesting he wasn't alone. "What's up?" he asked, his voice competing with background laughter and what sounded distinctly like champagne corks popping. The casual disregard, the apparent celebration occurring simultaneously with my abandoned dinner, sent acid climbing up my throat. "Where is everyone?" I managed, straining to keep my voice level. "Mom and Dad were supposed to be at my promotion dinner an hour and a half ago." A beat of silence followed, broken by Jason's uncomfortable chuckle. "Oh, right. Your work thing." The diminutive characterization of my career milestones sparked the first ember of anger amidst my hurt. "I got a coaching offer today," he continued, oblivious to or unconcerned with my emotional state. "Assistant position at Lexington High." Mom and Dad threw together a little celebration dinner. Nothing fancy, just some champagne and cake. The background noise increased as somebody apparently approached Jason, a female voice I recognized as my mother's calling out something about cutting the cake. "Look, maybe we can stop by later if there's time," my brother offered, the afterthought nature of the suggestion perfectly encapsulating my lifetime positioning in our family dynamic. "It's at Aquitaine in the South End," I responded automatically, though something inside me already knew they wouldn't come. "The private dining room. South End? On a weeknight?" Jason laughed, the sound echoing through years of similar dismissals. "That's ambitious." "Listen, I'll see what I can do, but Coach Evans is here talking strategy, and Dad's pretty invested in the conversation. The call ended shortly after, leaving me staring at Michael across a table laden with cooling gourmet food and uncorked wine worth half a day's pre-promotion salary. The realization settled over me with surprising clarity. My brother's assistant coaching position at our hometown high school warranted immediate family celebration, while my unprecedented promotion at a prestigious financial firm, effectively doubling my income and responsibility, didn't justify the 30-minute drive into Boston. The patterns of my life, the consistent prioritization of Jason's pursuits over mine regardless of scale or significance, suddenly aligned into perfect, undeniable focus. Memories cascaded through my consciousness, my high school graduation occurring the same weekend as Jason's regional baseball tournament, resulting in my parents attending the ceremony but leaving immediately after my name was called, missing my valedictorian speech to catch the fourth inning. My college acceptance celebration postponed 3 times before being forgotten entirely because Jason's training schedule took precedence. My bachelor's degree awarded cum laude, while my parents video called from the stands of Jason's community college coaching debut. The pattern extended beyond academics into personal milestones, birthdays commemorated with hasty cards while Jason's warranted-themed parties, holidays centered around accommodating his schedule rather than considering mine, family vacations planned around his coaching clinics or sports conferences. Michael's voice penetrated my spiral of realization, his tone gentler than his expression would suggest. Emily, this isn't right. This hasn't been right for your entire life, from what you've told me. His hand covered mine across the table, warm and steady against my cold fingers. I know they're your family, but this is beyond favoritism. This is neglect. The word landed like a diagnosis, naming the condition I'd normalized throughout my life. Neglect. Not just tonight, not just occasional oversight, but a systemic pattern of emotional abandonment justified through devotion to my brother. The server approached tentatively, professional enough not to comment on our escalating distress, offering to wrap the untouched portions of our meal. Michael handled the interaction while I remained locked in internal dialogue, fragments of memories rearranging themselves into a clearer picture of my family dynamic. The champagne I'd selected to celebrate my achievement now served a different purpose, burning slightly as I took a deep swallow directly from the bottle in a gesture entirely uncharacteristic of my usual restraint. We should enjoy this meal, Michael suggested, his attempt at salvaging the evening touching in its futility. This is still your night. But the celebration had transformed into something else entirely, a wake for the fantasy family I'd never actually had, a funeral for the illusion that significant enough achievement might finally earn their regard. I excused myself to the restroom, needing private space to process the emotional tsunami threatening to drown my carefully constructed professional demeanor. The Aquitaine ladies' room, with its vintage French fixtures and soft lighting designed to flatter even tear-streaked complexions, became an unlikely sanctuary. Gripping the marble countertop, I stared into the mirror, confronting the painful discrepancy between the accomplished professional who'd earned unprecedented recognition and the perpetually overlooked daughter still seeking parental approval. Fragments of childhood memories surfaced with new clarity, sitting alone at elementary school award ceremonies while other children's parents took photographs and offered congratulatory hugs, practicing violin for 3 hours daily only to have recitals attended half-heartedly if at all, creating elaborate science fair projects that my father, an engineer, showed less interest in than Jason's mediocre batting average. The pattern continued through adolescence and into adulthood, each achievement met with cursory acknowledgement before conversation pivoted to my brother's pursuits. My phone vibrated against the countertop where I'd placed it, displaying Marcus's name. Taking a steadying breath, I answered, attempting to sound composed. Emily, just checking that everything went well with the Henderson Trust transfer before tomorrow's meeting, he began, unaware of the personal drama unfolding alongside professional responsibilities. His call, focused entirely on my competence and contribution, created stark contrast to my family's dismissal. After addressing his question with surprising coherence given my emotional state, Marcus added, "The executive team is genuinely impressed with your handling of the Westlake acquisition strategy." You've got a remarkable future ahead. The simple professional recognition, delivered without qualification or comparison, triggered the tears I'd been suppressing. After ending the call, I sank onto the velvet-upholstered bench in the corner of the restroom, allowing silent sobs to rack my body. The physical release provided momentary relief until another call illuminated my phone screen, Stephanie's name appearing with perfect timing, as though some cosmic force had deployed her characteristic bluntness when I needed it most. "How's the big celebration? Are your parents finally grasping that they produced a financial prodigy?" she asked without preamble, her voice carrying the background noise of her apartment where she was presumably working late, as usual. The simple question demolished my temporary composure. Through halting sentences interrupted by suppressed sobs, I related the evening's events, the no-show, the devastating text, the revelation of my brother's competing celebration. Stephanie's initial silence spoke volumes, followed by a string of colorful expletives that somehow provided more comfort than conventional sympathy would have. "This is textbook emotional neglect, Emily," she stated, the directness I valued in our professional relationship extending to personal counsel. "Normal parents don't tell their child they're not a priority, especially not on a milestone night. Normal parents don't consistently elevate one child while diminishing another." Her assessment, delivered with characteristic precision, solidified something tentative that had been forming within me, recognition that the problem wasn't my inadequacy, but their incapacity. The realization provided strange, unexpected liberation. "You've spent years trying to earn recognition from people fundamentally incapable of providing it," Stephanie continued, her voice softening slightly. "It's like trying to withdraw money from an empty account. The failure isn't with your transaction, it's with their balance." The financial metaphor, perfectly tailored to my analytical mind, crystallized years of emotional struggle into a concept I could process. Applying cool water to my reddened eyes and blotchy complexion, I straightened my posture and returned to Michael, who waited with patient concern, having settled the bill in my absence. His relief at my calmer demeanor quickly transformed to attentive focus as I articulated thoughts forming in real time. "I've been operating under a fundamental misconception my entire life," I began, the clarity surprising even me. "I believed if I achieved enough, accomplished enough, succeeded enough, they would eventually recognize my worth. But their inability to value me isn't contingent on my achievements, it's contingent on their limitations. No promotion, no accomplishment, no success will ever be sufficient because the deficiency isn't in my efforts, but in their capacity." Michael reached across the table, entwining his fingers with mine. "I've watched you exhaust yourself trying to earn affection that should have been freely given," he said quietly. "You've been running a race with no finish line." The validation of my emerging perspective, coming from someone who'd witnessed my struggle firsthand, strengthened my resolve. "I need to stop performing for applause they're incapable of providing," I continued, the words creating their own momentum. "I need to stop making myself available for disappointment, stop volunteering for rejection, stop showing up for people who consistently demonstrate I'm an afterthought." As we gathered our belongings and prepared to leave the private dining room that had hosted an unintended revelation rather than a celebration, inspiration struck with unexpected force. "I need to write them a note," I declared, the impulse crystallizing into certainty. Michael's quizzical expression prompted elaboration. "Not just about tonight, about everything. About 29 years of emotional labor, of making myself smaller to accommodate their preferences, of managing their financial affairs because Jason can't be bothered to learn about investment strategies or retirement planning." The idea gained structure as we walked through the restaurant's main dining area, past tables of people engaged in ordinary evenings unmarked by familial rejection. They've relied on me for everything requiring actual adult responsibility, tax preparation, insurance navigation, estate planning, while simultaneously treating me as secondary. I've been handling their financial future while they skip my achievements to celebrate Jason's assistant coaching position. By the time we reached Michael's car, parked by the attentive valet who couldn't know the evening's actual outcome, the nebulous concept had solidified into concrete intention. "I'm stepping back completely," I decided, the certainty providing unexpected peace. No more financial advising, no more tax assistance, no more being the responsible daughter who handles everything while receiving nothing in return. Let Jason figure out their retirement strategy while they attend his high school basketball games. We returned to my apartment where the contrast between entering and leaving earlier that evening couldn't have been more stark. The hopeful woman in silk who departed with visions of familial recognition replaced by someone fundamentally altered by explicit rejection. Michael prepared tea while I opened my laptop, fingers hovering above the keyboard as I contemplated how to distill decades of emotional neglect into coherent paragraphs. The first draft emerged as raw emotion, a virtual shouting of accumulated hurt that would accomplish nothing beyond momentary catharsis. The second attempt swung toward clinical detachment, reading more like a business communication than a personal boundary declaration. Neither captured the complex truth I needed to convey. After an hour of writing and deleting, Michael gently suggested I approach the task as I would a difficult client communication, with honesty, clarity, and respect for both the recipient's perspective and my own professional worth. This framework provided the structure I needed, resulting in a third draft that balanced emotional authenticity with deliberate boundary setting. Dear Mom, Dad, and Jason, I began. Tonight's events have clarified something I've been unable or unwilling to acknowledge fully until now. The text stating I'm not a priority simply verbalized the family dynamic that has existed throughout my life. My accomplishments, needs, and presence have consistently been secondary to Jason's, regardless of comparative significance. The middle paragraphs detailed specific patterns without accusation, simply documenting the repeated prioritization that had characterized our family structure. I acknowledged their love while highlighting its conditional nature, emphasized my need for respect rather than merely attention, and outlined specific changes to our relationship moving forward. The final paragraph contained the essential boundary. Effective immediately, I'll no longer be managing your financial planning, tax preparation, or retirement strategy. I've attached Jason's contact information alongside the name of a qualified financial advisor who can assist with the transition. I've invested hundreds of unpaid hours managing these aspects of your lives while my own achievements went unacknowledged. This arrangement ends today. Let Jason handle it now. I printed the letter on heavyweight stationery, the physical document somehow carrying more significance than an email could convey. Michael offered to drive me to my parents' Lexington home, the digital clock on his dashboard reading 11:23 p.m. as we pulled into their driveway, where 3 unfamiliar cars indicated the celebration for Jason continued. Rather than ringing the doorbell and creating a confrontation, I slipped the envelope through the mail slot, the soft thud as it hit the entryway floor providing unexpected finality. The drive back to Boston passed in contemplative silence, my emotions cycling between liberation and grief, freedom from impossible expectations counterbalanced by mourning the parental recognition I'd never receive. Morning brought the predicted storm of notifications, 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a text from Jason reading simply, WTF. I silenced my phone and prepared for work with unusual serenity, the weight of perpetual striving for familial approval temporarily lifted from my shoulders. The financial advisory office provided structured refuge, client meetings, and portfolio reviews requiring focus that prevented dwelling on personal turmoil. Stephanie provided silent solidarity, placing coffee on my desk without commenting on my reddened eyes. By afternoon, the communication attempts had escalated. A voicemail from my mother employing emotional manipulation techniques I recognized with newfound clarity. I don't understand why you're being so selfish, her recorded voice quavered. After everything we've done for you. My father's message took a different approach, appealing to familial obligation. Your mother is very upset. You need to call immediately and explain yourself. Most revealing was Jason's voicemail, his indignation palpable through the speaker. Mom and Dad expect me to figure out their retirement? I don't know anything about that stuff. That's your thing, not mine. The entitlement underlying his protest, the assumption that financial management should remain my responsibility despite their collective dismissal, confirmed the correctness of my boundary. The following morning brought unexpected escalation when my father appeared in Henderson's lobby, his frame incongruous among the financial professionals streaming through security turnstiles. His appearance represented unprecedented effort, having navigated downtown traffic and parking he typically avoided with vehement complaints. Security called up, offering to escort him to reception or turn him away according to my preference. After momentary deliberation, I requested 5 minutes in the lobby rather than allowing him access to my professional space. Robert Sullivan stood rigidly beside a decorative ficus, discomfort evident in his posture. His opening statement cut directly to his purpose. "Your mother hasn't slept since getting your dramatic letter. You need to stop this nonsense and resume helping with our finances." No acknowledgement of the missed dinner, no recognition of the promotion, no apology for the devastating text, just expectation of continued service despite clear boundaries. My letter wasn't dramatic, it was accurate. I responded, maintaining professional composure despite the personal nature of our exchange. "I've managed your retirement planning, tax strategy, and estate documentation for 7 years without acknowledgement, while you've consistently prioritized Jason's achievements regardless of their significance compared to mine. That arrangement has ended." My father's expression registered genuine confusion, as though hearing a foreign language without translation. "This isn't about your brother. This is about responsibilities to family." The conversation continued in this vein, my father unable or unwilling to acknowledge the connection between their treatment and my withdrawal of financial services. Marcus passed through the lobby during this exchange, his questioning glance met with my subtle headshake indicating I had the situation under control. His silent support, contrasting sharply with my father's dismissive attitude toward my career, provided real-time validation of my decision. When security discreetly indicated my 5 minutes had elapsed, I concluded the conversation with surprising steadiness. "I have clients waiting. I've recommended an excellent financial advisor in the letter. I suggest you contact them promptly to ensure your retirement strategy remains on track." Watching my father's retreating form through the revolving doors, I experienced the contradictory emotions of grief and liberation that would characterize the coming weeks. My mother's communication strategy shifted from indignation to martyrdom, text messages emphasizing her emotional distress without addressing the substantive issues my letter had raised. Jason's approach evolved from anger to grudging recognition, culminating in a phone call 2 weeks after the incident, as my parents had taken to calling it. "So, turns out retirement planning is complicated," he admitted, awkwardness evident in his tone. "Dad tried meeting with that advisor you recommended, but he doesn't trust them since they're not family." The implicit request hung unaddressed between us. "That must be challenging," I replied, neither offering assistance nor expressing satisfaction at their predicament. "Having your trust and welfare deprioritized is difficult." The pointed parallel wasn't lost on Jason, whose lengthy pause suggested uncomfortable recognition. "I didn't realize how much you were handling for them," he eventually said, the closest to acknowledgement I'd received from any family member. "They really depended on you." The past tense registered significantly, depended, not depend. Boundaries established through that letter remained intact through the following weeks, tested by escalating attempts to restore the previous dynamic, but maintained through deliberate effort and support from Michael and Stephanie. The first Sunday dinner I missed without accompanying guilt marked significant personal progress, the hours instead spent with friends whose appreciation required no extraordinary achievement. Their genuine interest in my promotion and its implications contrasted sharply with my family's dismissal, underscoring the difference between relationships based on obligation versus mutual respect. 6 months passed, bringing autumn's crisp transformation to Boston Common and corresponding evolution in my professional and personal landscapes. The senior analyst position exceeded even my ambitious expectations, providing intellectual challenges alongside unexpected leadership opportunities. Marcus increasingly involved me in strategic planning sessions, typically reserved for director-level executives, my analytical perspective valued, without qualification or comparison. The promotion's financial benefits allowed pragmatic improvements, relocating to a bright Beacon Hill apartment with space for a proper home office, establishing a retirement portfolio beyond standard employer contributions, creating an emergency fund that provided previously unknown security. More significant than these material changes were the internal shifts occurring through weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Abrams, a silver-haired psychologist specializing in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect. The relationship patterns established in our formative years create templates we carry into adulthood, she explained during our third session, her office overlooking the Charles River providing literal and figurative perspective. Your achievement-based self-worth developed as adaptive response to conditional parental regard. Through these conversations, I began recognizing how familial patterns had shaped my professional behaviors, the perfectionism that sacrificed sleep for triple-checking already accurate reports, the difficulty accepting praise without immediately seeking the next challenge, the instinctive minimization of personal needs in favor of others' priorities. Healing emerged not as dramatic revelation but incremental recalibration, learning to recognize intrinsic worth separate from external validation, practicing self-compassion when perfection proved impossible, allowing vulnerability with trusted friends without assuming subsequent abandonment. My relationship with Michael deepened through this period of personal archaeology, his patient support neither enabling unhealthy patterns nor demanding immediate transformation. Growth happens at its own pace, he observed one evening as we walked along the harbor, fall winds carrying hints of approaching winter. You're unlearning lessons that took decades to establish. Stephanie's contribution to my healing took different form, her practical perspective cutting through emotional fog with characteristic directness. When self-doubt emerged during particularly challenging client situations, her blunt assessments grounded my thinking. Would Henderson have promoted you if you weren't exceptional at this? Would Marcus involve you in executive strategy if your input wasn't valuable? These external validations gradually became less necessary as internal confidence solidified, professional identity strengthening independent of familial recognition. 3 months after the incident, I received industry recognition for innovative portfolio management strategies, the Crystal Award presented at a regional financial services banquet. Michael and Stephanie attended alongside senior Henderson partners, their genuine celebration contrasting painfully with memories of the promotion dinner. My parents' sporadic communication during this period reflected mixed motivations, occasional texts expressing general interest without addressing underlying issues, birthday card containing gift certificate to a restaurant chain I'd never frequented. Their attempts at reconnection consistently occurred on their terms, maintaining comfortable distance from accountability while expecting resumption of normal relations. Jason's approach evolved differently, our strained relationship gradually transforming through awkward but increasingly honest conversations. His initial resentment at inheriting familial financial responsibilities gave way to grudging respect for my boundaries. I never realized how much energy Mom and Dad directed toward my stuff, he acknowledged during an unexpectedly candid phone call. Seeing it from your side now, it wasn't balanced or fair. This imperfect acknowledgement, miles from comprehensive understanding but inches from complete denial, represented significant movement in our sibling dynamic. The first holiday season following my boundary establishment brought predictable emotional turbulence. After declining my parents' Thanksgiving invitation with uncharacteristic firmness, I accepted Michael's invitation to join his family in New Hampshire. The contrast between the Sullivan holiday atmosphere and the Brennan household proved simultaneously healing and painful, his parents' genuine interest in each family member's experiences highlighting what mine had consistently lacked. His mother, Catherine, a retired literature professor with penetrating intelligence behind wire-rimmed glasses, engaged me in substantive conversation about financial markets and career development. His father, Thomas, a carpenter whose weathered hands created functional art from raw lumber, asked thoughtful questions about my role at Henderson without glazing over at technical details. The inclusive dynamic, where each person's contribution received equal consideration regardless of content, demonstrated family interaction based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical preference. By December, my mother's communication strategy shifted toward tentative reconciliation, her texts acknowledging missing my financial expertise, while avoiding explicit recognition of the patterns that prompted my withdrawal. My father, less adept at emotional navigation, relied on practical requests, questions about tax documentation or retirement account statements, as indirect relationship maintenance. Their attempts at connection, however imperfect, indicated emerging awareness that restoring relationship required adjustment rather than mere passage of time. Jason's evolution proved most surprising, his perspective shifting through first-hand experience of the parental expectations I'd managed silently for years. "They asked me 3 times yesterday when I'm getting married and giving them grandchildren," he reported during an unprecedented lunch meeting at a neutral downtown restaurant. "Is that what you've been dealing with all along?" The incremental recognition of his privileged position within our family structure, while incomplete, represented genuine growth from previous obliviousness. My personal healing accelerated through deliberate community building, strengthening connections with colleagues whose respect derived from professional contribution rather than familial obligation, developing friendships based on mutual interest rather than convenience or circumstance, creating chosen family to supplement biological relationships. When Henderson assigned me leadership of the Northwestern Mutual Acquisition Team, the accomplishment warranted celebration with this intentionally cultivated circle. The intimate gathering at a harborside restaurant featured no empty chairs or devastating texts, just genuine recognition from people who valued my presence as well as my achievements. My mother's birthday in February presented opportunity for cautious reconnection on my terms. Rather than managing her celebration as I'd done previous years, scheduling restaurant reservations, coordinating gift purchases from extended family, creating custom photo albums, I sent thoughtful but bounded recognition, flowers with personalized card, scheduled phone call of predetermined duration. Her surprised appreciation at these modest gestures, so different from her typical expectations, suggested dawning recognition of our relationship's new parameters. Conversations with Dr. Abrams helped navigate these evolving family dynamics without sacrificing hard-won boundaries or authentic self-expression. Healthy relationships involve mutual adjustment, she observed during a particularly productive session. Their limited capacity doesn't diminish your inherent worth. This perspective, that their treatment reflected their limitations rather than my value, provided foundation for genuine acceptance rather than continued striving for impossible validation. By spring, professional achievements accumulated alongside personal growth, client portfolio expansion, leadership in mentoring junior analysts, recognition in financial industry publications. These external validations, while gratifying, no longer carried the desperate significance of parental surrogates. Success derived satisfaction from intrinsic accomplishment rather than filling familial validation voids, professional identities standing independent of childhood roles. The most profound transformation occurred internally, invisible to casual observation but fundamental to daily experience. Where perpetual striving once created constant anxiety, acceptance of inherent worth independent of achievement brought unfamiliar peace. Where parental approval once represented unattainable holy grail, self-validation provided sustainable alternative. Where family dynamics once dictated self-perception, deliberate self-definition created authentic identity independent of childhood roles. Stepping onto the stage at the Northeast Financial Services Association Conference to accept Innovation in Client Services Award, I scanned the audience, filled with industry colleagues, Michael's supportive presence, and Stephanie's characteristic enthusiastic gesturing. The absence of Sullivan family members, once devastating confirmation of secondary status, now registered as simple fact without emotional charge. Their inability to witness or value my professional journey reflected their limitations rather than diminishing my accomplishment. This realization that their treatment had always indicated their capacity rather than my worth represented liberation from lifetime seeking validation from those fundamentally unable to provide it. True priority comes not from parents who can only see one child clearly, but from choosing who deserves permanent place in your life and heart. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to prioritize your own well-being over harmful family expectations? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear they're worthy of being a priority. Thank you for witnessing my journey. May you always know your inherent value isn't determined by others' capacity to recognize it.